What is going on, chat, man? Today we are back. I'm with my boy,
yes, sir.
Young Fog.
Come on, man.
And today we are reacting to the truth about basketball in the 80s. He said basketball back then in the 80s and the 90s, he doesn't think it was actually really good.
That was a weak era, bro. You know what I'm saying? I think it's really only like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Like, who else played in those eras, bro? You know what I'm saying?
Chat, I have to put him on. It was only right. This was highly anticipated and highly recommended. So, let's get straight into it. But if you guys are new to my channel and you like old NBA content, man, hit the subscribe button, man, and join the crew. But with that being said, let's go. Let me turn up the volume a little bit. Woo! I'm excited, man.
Okay.
I don't know what you expected, but it was good basketball.
Okay.
I'll be honest though, I was really mind blown when I watched this video. Actually, if you guys want to go check that out on my channel, you can. When I reacted to this, I thought basketball in '80 was bad. So, hey.
If you've ever been a part of NBA debates that involve discussions about the 1980s, then you know that people can be pretty divided on their opinions on the style and quality of basketball that came from that era, and even about what that era represented. As someone who loves that era of NBA basketball and who has personally watched hundreds of hours throughout my life of it, I feel like I can offer a bit of clarification on how people can accurately view this decade. I want to start by tackling several aspects about the decade and talk about what's true.
Back then, I forgot to tell you, back then they actually get down. Like, the stars actually threw punches.
They would fight?
Yes,
on the court?
like actually. Chat, let us know down below if it was actually like that. Because based on the videos I was seeing, my chat been telling me that it's actually crazy, bro. Like, you'll see, like, LeBron, you'll never see LeBron fight now, right? Like, picture LeBron fight punching Stephen Curry. That's crazy, right?
That would be crazy.
That's exactly, I think, basically what was happening to them.
What isn't true, and what you might have not known. First, we'll start with one of the most argued over topics, defense. The current perception of 80s defense depends on...
What you think about the defense back then?
I don't know too much about it. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Okay.
I really don't.
On who you ask.
You'll learn
if
today.
You ask a fan from an older generation, more often than not, they're going to tell you that defense was greater at that time. That back then they played grown man defense. They would always.
Back then, I'm telling you, bro, it was grown man defense. You said it was weak.
I mean, I don't know, but I mean, it must have been weak.
You don't think it was that crazy?
Punish each other physically back then, and nowadays they can barely even touch each other. This is their narrative. But if you ask a lot of younger fans, they don't have to deal with the nostalgia bias, but they also have the disadvantage of not actually watching those games. Those younger fans will say things like defense was less advanced back then, and that
this is literally you.
It was easier to score and not as physical as advertised. There's even compilation videos on YouTube of bad defense from the 80s, where guys are given little resistance and minimal hustle and effort is on display. So what gives? You've got two different groups saying totally opposite things about a specific decade. Well, as usual, the truth lies somewhere in the middle and a little off to the side. Let's start with the facts and details we know about 80s basketball. In today's current NBA, teams average 111.7 points per game.
What's your initial thoughts on defense now and defense back then? Do you think the defense now is actually strong?
I just think there's much more strategies now and different plays that have like evolved since then. So it of course has to be better now in modern day.
Okay.
Which is really high. It's actually the highest since the days Wilt Chamberlain played basketball. Now the 1980s was actually very close in total offense. Throughout that decade, teams usually averaged around 109 points per game, which is also a lot of offense. Not only that, but throughout the 80s, teams shot 48% from the field compared to today's 46%. In fact, in terms of field goal percentage, the 1980s were the most efficient decade in all of NBA history.
Do you even think Larry Bird's catching bodies like that, though?
Man, I didn't. Larry Bird's crazy, bro.
Break down all the statistical league averages in detail, but here's what you need to know. Today, the league is very high scoring. The 2000s were very low, the late 90s were very low, the early 90s were high, and the 1980s were very high. So immediately, at face value, it appears the 80s defensive era narrative has been pretty overblown, based on how many points they were scoring and how efficiently they were scoring. But what we need to understand was that the biggest contributing factor to this was the pace of play. The 1980s was some of the most fast-break, transition-heavy basketball the league has ever seen. In today's game, most of the very high scoring comes from the inflation of three-point attempts. But in the 80s, it was more due to the fact that most games looked like a track meet. The Showtime Lakers of the 80s were famous for this, since Magic Johnson was always pushing the tempo.
What you know about the Showtime Lakers, bro? And the passing, bro? I feel... Chat, did the Lakers...
I don't know anything about it, man.
Generally?
No, I don't.
You need to start watching that on your channel, bro.
Should I watch that down below?
Let him know down below if you guys want Young Fob to, react to the Showtime Lakers and everything. But I feel like the Showtime Lakers, I don't know too much, but every time I see Magic Johnson just playing, it's just like amazing passes, like they're moving around. And I don't even know too much about Magic Johnson, if I'm being completely honest, chat.
But it wasn't just them. Many teams played a fast break style, like the Denver Nuggets, who were notorious for their incredibly fast and potent offense, but also a terrible defense. The Pistons, despite their defensive perception, also ran the fast break a lot and could score a ton of points. And there were also teams like Phoenix, Dallas, and Philadelphia. So transition basketball was pretty much the norm in those days.
Oh my god.
With a lot of fast breaks.
Bro, that's Charles Barkley moving, bro. That's a problem, bro. Are you like amazed a little bit or anything right now?
It's crazy, bro. But like, I see so many like people dunking in this era.
So
was the paint defense weak?
I'm not sure about that. I don't necessarily think so. I feel like the paint was stronger because you can hand check, and also it was just like people just doing stuff. I feel like I don't know. Chat, let us know down below. Actually.
Of layups and dunks, which are easier opportunities. Easier opportunities equals a higher field goal percentage.
Ooh.
The highest scoring game in NBA history actually came from this era, which was on December 13th, 1983, when the Detroit Pistons defeated the Denver Nuggets in triple overtime, 186 to 184. These were the Pistons, who were known for their physicality, their Jordan rules, and their overall punishing defense. So how in the world could this defensively revered squad be involved in a game where the final score was in the 180s? It's starting to sound like this whole defensive era thing is just a huge myth. Well, we're not done yet, and that brings us to the next aspect that goes somewhat hand in hand with this one, physicality. One of the biggest influences in the different eras.
Do you think back then was way more physical? Actually, it was way more. I feel like
you told me there's more fights.
Yeah.
And then like, look at how Larry Bird would get injured, bro.
Facts. That is true. Okay.
That people don't usually think of is the flagrant foul rule. Most of you know the details of the flagrant foul, but for those who don't, it's a foul where unnecessary roughness is used on another player. Many times it's called when there is a blow to the head or strong physical contact that was in no way a play on the basketball. Committing this flagrant foul can be devastating to the team that does it, because it results in either 1 or 2 free throws and maintained possession of the ball, and often an ejection of the player who committed the foul.
I got a big question for you, actually. Do you think LeBron's era is stronger than the 80s? That's a real deal right there.
Absolutely.
What?
Why would it not be?
You think LeBron's era is harder than the 80s?
Yeah, it's so much harder teams to play.
Okay. Chat, let us know down below, actually. That's a good question.
This is a pretty good rule. It keeps players protected, it keeps players from unnecessary serious injuries, and it often keeps tense moments from escalating into really ugly situations. And this rule did not exist until 1990. That means that in the fullness of the 1980s, almost every hard foul was just considered a foul. If this is the case, doesn't it make sense to hit the offensive player a little harder to make sure he doesn't get an and
How do you feel
doesn't
about
it make
this?
sense
Like, would you want to play
extra?
basketball during this time?
Nah, it looks so much rougher, bro.
Like, it feels like a blood war on the court.
Yeah, nah. People are just throwing elbows all day.
On it, if it means they think twice before attacking the basket next time? The games in the 80s weren't always played with this physically punishing nature, only when they needed to be, like for the Jordan rules or in the NBA playoffs. In the postseason, where every possession and every point counts, players would often exercise this freedom for the sake of trying to win the ballgame. It wasn't that this generation of players was naturally more violent, It's that they were allowed to be. The truth is, just like modern basketball...
What's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on them being allowed to be like that?
I don't know. I don't think it should have been. Why did they let it go for so long? Like, it's a lot of, like, you know, they play really rough defense.
Do you feel like LeBron can play against this, though? That's the real question.
I mean, he was, what, 6'9", 6'8", 270 pounds,
So
man.
you easily think he can go with this era and just go crazy?
He could, yeah.
Any era? Even the 90s?
I don't know about the 90s might be rough for LeBron.
But you think he can go in there?
Oh, but in the 80s, yeah.
Okay.
I think 80s, yeah.
Players who played terrible defense. The key differences were the high-octane pace of play and the permissible hard fouls. In the 1980s, it was possible to have both a league where teams could score in...
So they're just looking at him, just... Oop, he made the shot.
So you think the 80s is that bad, bro? Like, the defense in the paint is that bad?
We're watching it as we speak.
And a league where games would become very physical and the style...
So you think it was nothing, right, basically? It was just fouling, and that's just what it consumed of?
That's what it's looking like to me.
Wow.
Would change significantly. There was a term back in the day that was common among players, coaches, referees, and commentators. Setting the tone. You don't hear it much anymore in today's game, but back then it was very important, and it essentially meant that they were coming out of the gates to start the game, setting the tone for the game's pace, style, and physicality. Nowadays, the game is much more consistent in terms of its style and physicality, because the rules have become much more clear on what is acceptable and what's not, what is permissible contact and what isn't. In the 80s, it was easier for players to control the game and more difficult for the referees to control the game, because pretty much anything goes. For example, it was common for teams like the Celtics and
you think it's more advantageous?
It was a rougher game.
Exactly.
That's all that means.
To be even more physical in matchups with the Lakers, trying to take them out of their finesse style of basketball. They came out of the gates, setting the tone, and oftentimes, it worked. The next aspect is athleticism. You've heard it, and I've heard it. The idea that players back then were slower, weaker, and smaller than modern-day athletes.
Do you believe that? Do you believe people back then were weaker than modern day? What's your thoughts on it?
I think today's people are way stronger. I'll be completely honest. Because there's way more material and everything to actually get that strong. You know? Mm-hmm. I don't think people were buff playing basketball in the 80s. If I'm not mistaken, though, chat. Let me know down below.
Is it somewhat accurate? Probably. Is it also grossly exaggerated? Probably that too. In the past 10 years of modern NBA basketball, the average height of the NBA player is 6 foot 7 inches tall and weighs 220.7 pounds. In the 10 years of the 1980s, the average height was also 6 foot 7 inches tall and the average weight was 207 pounds.
Okay, so that makes kind of sense.
I think there's taller guys now than back then, though. Like 6'7" is like, you know, a pretty solid height there. But I feel like we have taller people. Like we have a lot of 7 foot and up players in the NBA
we do
then.
have a lot. Yeah.
So there's a lot of centers that overpower that. But there was also a lot of shorter people. I feel like in the 80s than now modern day.
Yeah,
NBA
that's
as well.
true. That is true.
So I feel like it's a little lower there in the 80s.
Okay. Okay, respectable.
So although they stood just as tall side to side to one another, the major difference was the weight of the players at nearly 14 pounds less. Simply put, this difference was usually made up of muscle mass. Modern players have an advantage with modern training methods, eating habits, and fitness routines.
Shoulders popping.
Guys in the 80s were simply skinnier, but many of them were still very athletic and had lean muscle. They just overall looked a little less physically imposing than today's players. This has partially led some newer fans to criticize this era when they're looking at some of the most non-threatening and least athletic players of the 80s. They'll say things like the league was packed with part-time plumbers and accountants. I hate it.
Do you think there was part-time plumbers in the 80s?
Part-time plumbers?
That's a crazy question.
That's kind of a crazy diss for that generation, man.
Do you feel like there was players that should have been in the NBA at that time and they just got a spot because it was early NBA? Come on, man.
I mean, possibly. We don't know. But let's just keep watching, man.
Okay.
When people say
I try to get it out of him,
because
chat.
it's easy to take some examples and condemn an entire era for it. It's almost like when people think of the state of athleticism in 2020, they automatically think of Giannis. And when they think of the state of athleticism in the 90s, they think of Jeff Hornacek. The problem with that is that it's erring on an extreme example and isn't a proper survey of the athleticism of the league as a whole.
I'm gonna be honest, I really don't know. I'm gonna be honest. Chat, can you guys let us know who this guy is? We generally don't know.
Whole at that time. Want another example?
Jeff Hornacek.
Picture 20 years from now. People are hating on LeBron James, saying he didn't play in a strong era of real athleticism, and here's the
GOAT!
How strong is LeBron's era in 2016 when he lost the MVP race to a guy who struggles to dunk a basketball? How strong could that era have been when one of the best players in the league was someone who was consistently overweight? In LeBron's era, he played against plumbers like J.J. Redick and Kelly Olynyk.
Do you think this guy's genuinely dissing? Like, how do you feel about him actually dissing your favorite player right now? Bro, he said Nikola Jokic won and he's overweight. Stephen Curry can't dunk the ball.
But think about his three. Just because he can't doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't answer the question, though. He's dissing your favorite player.
I don't like that, though.
How weak were the athletes in LeBron's era if a guy who was only 5'9" tall could average nearly 30 points per game? Don't you guys see how ridiculous and biased these statements are? Although many of the statements are true to an extent, they're cherry-picking details and acting as if it's the complete picture. They're completely lacking context, but statements like these are usually just emotionally motivated agendas in order to build a negative narrative about a player that they don't like as much as their favorite player. People do this all the time with the 1980s. But when you look around the league in that era as a whole, you see guys who were incredible athletes like Dominique Wilkins, Kenny Skywalker, Michael Jordan, Daryl Dawkins, Charles Barkley, Gerald Wilkins, Julius Erving, Sean Kemp, Xavier McDaniel, Hakeem Olajuwon, Karl Malone, James Worthy, Tom Chambers, Darrell Griffith, David Thompson, Terrence Stansbury, Clyde Drexler, Larry Nance, Dennis Rodman, Orlando Woolridge, David Robinson, Roy Hinson. Seriously, do I need to keep...
Do you know any of these names?
Yeah, I'm kind of familiar with a couple
I know
of them.
like maybe 3 or 4.
So you don't think any of those guys made the 80s a competition? So you only you still remain with the idea of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson the only competition in that era?
I definitely just think modern day is more competitive. I know back then there might have been less rules, you know what I'm saying, but now people are stronger, bro, so it's so much more challenging, you know what I'm saying?
Going. Many people are just too young or weren't watching at that time to know about a lot of the freakishly gifted athletes of the 1980s, just like how 20 to 30 years from now, many people won't know about many of the great athletes we watch in today's game. The final aspect is competition. I'll make this one quick, but since the 1960s when the Boston Celtics ruled the basketball world, the 1980s were the toughest era of competition in terms of how hard it was to break through and win a championship.
Dang.
That was because the 80s were, as I call it, the era of super teams. There was so much talent at the top of the league, and you had several dynasty-worthy rosters consistently duking it out. Part of that was how the league was rich with stars, but the other part was how there were only 23 teams in the league. Imagine today's NBA, and then we eliminate 7 of the teams.
Wow!
And then distribute the talent from those teams to the remaining 23 teams. Naturally, what would you get? A handful of super teams. This was essentially the NBA in the 1980s. Look around the teams of the league.
Does that not impress you yet? There's super teams in the 80s, bro.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
And who won championships in that decade? If you had just 1 or 2 stars on your team in that era, you're not winning a championship. You needed 3 or 4 and a deep bench just to even win 1 ring.
Wow.
With all this being said, am I saying that the 80s was the greatest era of basketball? Not necessarily, but it was a great era, with a crazy history, and with a fantastic collection of talent and athletes, and it certainly deserves your respect. Let me know in the comments section which decade you think had the greatest collection of talent.
Chat, let us know down below what you guys think. But Fob, what you think it is about? What you think about this video?
Man, I mean, I think the 80s, you know what I'm saying, had some solid players in there. Definitely more I need to learn about, you know what I'm saying, on my end, I don't know as much about. I think since there was less rules, you know what I'm saying, there might have been a lot of things that might have gotten through
Okay.
that shouldn't have,
Okay.
that or that wouldn't in modern day basketball. You know what
Okay.
I'm saying?
Okay.
You know, so technology also back then to train,
Okay.
not as advanced as now.
Okay. Okay.
So
The big question is, do you think this era is better, or at least stronger than the current era? Or
nah, absolutely not. I absolutely think
they
that
have super teams everywhere.
they had a lot of great teams, but I feel like back then, Lewis said they were like lighter, they were skinnier guys.
Okay.
So
Okay.
strength wise, I think modern day basketball is
Okay.
stronger. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Stronger
Okay.
guys.
Respect. Chat. Let us know down below what you guys think. I appreciate you guys, for recommending me this video. This was absolutely a banger. But with that being said, this is the end of the video. And make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And I'll catch y'all next time. Yes, sir.